From CRI Simple Numbers, this is Profitability Playbook, the Simple Numbers Podcast, a podcast for those who champion market growth and anchor the nation's economy, small businesses, and entrepreneurs.
Hey there. Welcome to the Simple Numbers Profitability Playbook podcast. And just like Brandon and I promised on our last episode, we have a special guest for you today. And we had to bring in Greg Crabtree to introduce him and be here. He doesn't do anything around here, so we thought we'd get him on to talk to our special guest today. So Greg, go ahead, fire up the intro and let's get it started.
Yeah, so I met Kohen through a mutual acquaintance, and in one of my travels to Australia, we were able to meet up and chat, and then had some ongoing conversations. So it really led into, the challenges that we see in the marketplace right now is marketing effectiveness is in a massive state of shift. We're seeing a lot of people challenged with how do you get in to talk to business opportunities using the old tried and true Google AdWords, paid promotions, SEO, all types of those other, social media type applications. And even then, it even gets more squirrely once you try to get a human to actually go try to scale the castle to get in to see the critical person. And so when I met Kohen, he really delivered what I thought was the most innovative approach to business marketing that I've seen probably since the invention of the internet. And I really do believe that it's something that, people need to kind of look at and see, this is where the market has to go to if you're going to be effective. And really wanted to make people aware of how that works and what they've been able to come up with. They launched their company in Australia. Now they have a presence in the United States. But I really do think in terms of this conceptual understanding of the challenges of the marketplace that, we're in a market that is going to struggle to grow. And you're now, is you guys heard us talk about, the participation trophy economy is over. We're in the street fight economy, and you've got to go punch your competitor in the mouth and take their business away from them. And the tools that you've used for the last 25 years aren't going to take care of you for the next 10. And so we've really got to look at new tool sets, new ideas, and really kind of break through the barriers that business naturally puts up to keep you from actually accessing, the clients that work best for you and you best for them. So Kohen, give us an idea of kind of what you guys have come up with and how that's going to really help really more. And like I said, this is more focused on the business to business, community. And so tell us what you guys have created.
Sure. Yeah. We've built a world first business development enhancement technology. We've been around for a while now. We're actually becoming a teenager this year, which is quite fun. We turned 13 in March. So, but where we really got to would have been in 2018 was we figured out that there was this big opportunity to disrupt the way that large complex deals are actually won. And there's a whole heap of inherent challenges within how they're won that we believed our technology that we had at the time could be calibrated to actually drive outcome. And so what it is essentially is it's not necessarily marketing, it's not sales, it's kind of inbound. It's not inbound, it's not outbound, it's in motion. So what we're doing is we're sitting down with customers and going, hey, rather than casting a giant net where you're trying to get as many leads as possible from companies that you think are right, what happens when you can actually really focus and dial in on the companies that actually make a difference? The ones that you can deliver the best in, drive the most profitability in, have the right kind of contracts coming up. What does that game look like? And really what we're doing is we've built a powerful technology that allows us to identify the entire decision chains of a target organization, but more importantly, access them in a way that we don't require any contact data, because we all know that emailing's getting less and less effective. We don't have to message them on LinkedIn because that's getting less and less effective. We don't have to message them on the phone for them, sit down, have a coffee with them, have a meeting with them. And really the game changes significantly when you can educate and align an entire decision chain leading up to a deal-making process, but more importantly, during it. Because, when you're going after these large competitive processes like an RFQ or an RFP or a tender or a quote, whatever you want to call it, what happens is everyone's playing the same game. They're submitting a document, procurement are ticking boxes, and you can't really do much at all. So not only is it about getting to the right people up and down those decision chains, but more importantly, it's getting them to actually pay attention to your differentiators and the things that actually make you different. Because all of the data that we have over the years strongly correlates to differentiation is what wins deals. But more importantly, that differentiation needs to be aligned with all of the right stakeholders. And as you get in these bigger decision-making processes, Harvard Business did a study a few years back, and they say that there's 6.8 decision makers in a typical B2B sales exchange.
Right.
That's a typical one. When you're talking about a much more complex, larger $1 million to multi-million dollar contract, it's far more complex than that. You've got third parties involved like consultants. You've got sometimes financiers of projects. You've got the entity themselves. And so a decision can go up a chain, it can go down a chain. And what's happening is a lot of companies are focused on the couple of relationships they can form. But because they're long, complex deal cycles, there's a heap of inherent risk in it. Like that person can leave and then the deal leaves with them, for example. But worse than that, and the thing that we see happen time and time again, is that the decision actually gets pushed down the chain to like middle level management. They take it to their people. They don't know who the company is. They're at the bottom of the pile. They see it as a risk or a threat to their job and the way they do things, and they just kill the deal. It gets fed back up. Look, we don't know who they are. It's a risk to my role, or it's, too risky because we've got an incumbent that we're familiar with. And that's how these deals are being killed. But the really cool thing about our solution isn't just accessing, educating, and aligning these decision chains. It's a two-motion approach where we're educating and aligning them in advance of deals, because really there's three things that you want to control in a large deal. One of them is perception, and quite often they have the completely wrong perception of your business. And traditionally, you haven't been able to control that at all. The other one's price. If everyone's playing the same game of ticking boxes and can't stack up to the finance department or the C-suite or the board, that yeah, sure, you're 10, 15, 20% higher cost, but you've got a much better lifetime value because you've got a better quality product or better service wrapped around it. And it's actually far better off paying that 10, 15, 20%. Then you've got no chance at winning those kind of deals. Right. And so what's really powerful about our solution is the third one is time. Like typically people are kind of sitting there waiting with bated breath for an opportunity to come up. And then they're ramping up their efforts. So you hear about the opportunity, you ramp up your efforts, you leverage existing relationships, try and forge new ones, you submit. And then the most mental crazy thing in the world happens, which is you submit, you can't go above your champion, or in a lot of cases, you can't pick up the phone and call them. You can't have a meeting with them. And you've got a period of months where you just have to sit there and cross your fingers and hope for the best. Yeah. And that is mental when you think about it. Like the game hasn't been disrupted until we've come along. So the cool thing about our solution is not just giving our companies that that use our technology a leg up on their competitive set in advance of the deal, but more importantly, when a deal's in motion, like the data granularity that we can get to when we're in motion on an exact deal is insane. Like we can literally see through that deal-making process, the parts of the decision chain, like finance or operations or engineering, right up to the board sort of executives, C-suite level, are they actually absorbing the right kinds of information that differentiate you? Are they taking it in? Do they understand the key things that really matter to them? And more importantly, matter to get the win. And so we can kind of shine a torch and a light through that deal-making process, and we get powerful analytics back as to what's kind of going on, which is pretty profound, because there isn't another solution that can actually do that. The other thing, and I'll stop in a second, I'm obviously pretty passionate about what we've built, is that more than that, like, you know, we can actually make a difference to an outcome, because our data modeling, if we don't see the right trend lines in that chain folding out, you need to recalibrate, re-educate, and align people. And the best part is that, you don't actually need to know who all the decision makers are. And most of the time, people don't. They don't know who they all are. And it gets complex because they have a circle of influence, is what we call them, the people around them who help make a decision. I mean, good luck accessing all 7 people in a smaller deal, let alone hundreds of people who can take your deal. So yeah, it's a pretty exciting solution. And we've won, billions of dollars in contracts in the last couple of years with it alone. So
Yeah. So how much of those deals are you finding an opportunity that your client didn't even know existed?
yeah, it's a great question. Fascinating data that we get back, right? So because we're educating and aligning these decision chains in advance, we've got like a layer over everything that's happening. And all of these stakeholders don't have to change any of their behaviors. So they never have to click anything, open anything, do anything really. So we get really interesting data back, like we might see that there's a giant spike in interest with, company X, and, maybe it's this part of the chain. And what that does is we've had plenty of instances where customers have had these kind of light bulb moments with our customer success team where they've gone, whoa, that's really interesting. And we've gone, why? And they're like, well, we all know that there's an opportunity coming, but no one knows where.
Yeah.
And so we can kind of see in advance when things are starting to tip up in their approach. And again, you still need a human resource, Greg, to to submit a contract and form a relationship. Our role is to pad out and make sure that all of the people that you can never get to, like seriously never get to, like chairperson level even, actually you get the opportunity to understand what makes you special. So yeah, it does happen quite a lot actually, where we get some intelligence in advance of when these opportunities are actually going out to market, which is pretty cool.
I was working with a client yesterday that's got a business to business deal with a very, very large, client that's, and just going through the strategies of this was something that has been talked about years before. And now is just the convergence of time where, the doors open up and the opportunity is there, but there's still nuances as we were going through the strategies of deployment and launching, but then what's next, where's the next thing? And, just like you're talking about, the amount of not knowing where they will let you go with this once you even initially you've even gotten in the door, but there's the next thing that you do with that business opportunity, because you've got to access the C-suite people that they're the critical decision makers to make that next thing. And so that director level person is engaging, and we got an initial thing going, but to really make it hum, you've got to bring it all to the table and kind of get that alignment. And so that's certainly huge. I mean, I think when people hear things like this, I mean, this all sounds great and well, but as we know, one of the huge challenges in marketing is, we see clients engage in marketing, business development, sales activities. All sounds great at the beginning, but then you go into this black hole of darkness as you try to implement that strategy. And is it going to work? Are we hearing anything? Oh, well, I got a meeting with so-and-so, or no, we're waiting to hear back on it. And so how does the engagement process to make your process and your techniques come to life? How does that interact with your client then, and how do you keep things on track so that you're making progress?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, I mean, look, other traditional forms of marketing certainly have their place, but they don't work when it comes to large, complex deals. That's the reality. I mean, there's so many stakeholders involved that need to be aligned. It's ridiculous, right? So, really what we do, rather than like lead generation and things where you might get a lead come through and they're looking at click metrics and impression metrics and all this kind of stuff. Like, I mean, views blow my mind because they're actually, I don't know if people know this, but a view that's reported generally from these platforms is actually only 2 seconds. Yeah. Now, you tell me if that 2 seconds has actually added value to someone and whether they've understood what they need to. I would argue that it definitely has not. Yeah. So, there's all of these crazy things going on. But really what we do, Greg, is like, I don't know if you've ever heard of this kind of focus triangles model. But essentially, like if you were to get a triangle, and I'm just going to draw one with my fingers, at the bottom of that triangle, you have focus, and at the top of the triangle, you have success. Now, if you have split focus and you're trying to chase every possible thing that you can, and you're just casting a giant net to feed the beast, what ends up happening is you end up taking on submarginal business that's actually doing you damage. It's not doing you good because you have to keep the lights on. Yeah. So if you flip that triangle on its head and you go, hey, let's dial in here and get really focused on the companies that have the contracts that get us to our growth goals, get us to our profitability goals, get us into a position where you're actually able to start winning with the companies you've always dreamt of. What does that do to your business? Because, we're all playing an efficiency game when it comes to profitability. And the best way to get efficiency is to focus on the things that you are the best at and stop saying yes to things that you're not. So what we do with a customer is we run them through a process, and I'll kind of explain it. So the first part of the process is, we get very granular with the organizations that have the right contracts that are actually going to move the needle and get them to where they're aiming to go. So first of all, we understand their goals, their objectives, and then we're playing a game of like, cool, let's identify all of the exact companies that get you there. And then what we do is we analyze the decision chains of all of those organizations. By the way, all of the data that we access and things is all anonymized. It all adheres to privacy and probity policies. We're not reporting back individuals' names. Mm-hmm. We're reporting back at an entity and a role level. But what we're doing is we're seeing like, okay, well, with these kinds of deals, like who do you actually need to matter to? And we analyze that up and down that chain. Then what we do, Greg, is we do a really interesting thing, which is we find out who their top kind of 3 to 5 competitors are, and we run data analysis across all of their public-facing information. Right. And we figure out how they're all positioning themselves in the market. And a really interesting thing happens when we do that 99% of the time, which is like everyone seems to copy, because they do their market research, the best player in the market. And all that does is bastardizes the entire market. Everyone is saying the same thing. But we know, as much as you would know, that every business has some gold in it. They've got things that really do differentiate them. And there's things that they're doing that maybe their competitors are doing that no one's differentiating on. Yep. So we then go through a process which is 2 hours where we're in a room asking pointed questions with all of that data and knowledge already, baked out. Yep. Of like, hey, who is it? Not just that you need to matter to, but what's different about you? And we get there very, very quickly. And the cool thing is that by the end of that process, within a few days, we've got everything that we're going to differentiate you with. And we're using our technology to play a big role in this as well. Yeah. And then, only the right people are the exact companies that you should be mattering to, because the reality is you don't need to matter to everyone. You don't need to cast a giant net with a lot of wastage. You just need to matter to the right people. They're the only people that really get exposed to what makes you special and what differentiates you from all the other noise in the market.
Yeah. Well, I think the failure that we see with our clients who have to go, they're going for, let's say $1 million and up engagement, type contracts, just to kind of put a data point there to it. That I think most of them resort to, well, let's go find somebody who's worked for that company and hire them as a salesperson so that they can get us in the door. As I mean, yeah, that sounds good, but you and I both know you get a lot of variability of the skill set of that person because there's a reason why they're not working there anymore. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and so there's just, I've just always looked at this. There's got to be a better way than just throwing an army of people or thinking that you can take small business social media techniques and make them work for, $100 million business. Yeah. And you just got to think differently, but you've got to find some way to create that leverage ratio. Otherwise you just, I've said this before, clients who go into a scaling and a growing process. Well, back when the market was growing, we were bending over backwards trying to pat ourselves on the back of how great we were at growing. And it's like, no, you weren't. You were getting a gift of the market. You didn't do that. I mean, you were just the next available person and they called you and you said, oh, look at the thing I won. No. Now, okay. And when you get into a Coke versus Pepsi 1% market share gain kind of fight, it's brutal. And it sometimes isn't worth it. But yet, if you can find that soft underbelly like you're talking about to go in and find that thing that's not as commonly known and it's still kind of in the developing stage, and if you can use some of that kind of intelligence, all right, now you're really trying to do an end run. And I mean, I think that's the thing that just kind of excited me about having that ability to do it. And then and like I said, we see so many people that ramp up in this cost and it destroys profitability, and they're going to explain it away. Oh, well, we invested in sales and marketing.
Yeah.
Well, it didn't work. I mean, so
Yeah. It's pretty interesting. Like we've got companies, Greg, that we started working with this KDM Advantage solution with like 5 years ago because we started building it out in 2018. And some insane things have happened. Like we've got companies that still only have one business development rep, and they're like 10 times the size they were 5 years ago. Like we saw companies that had sub 20% win rates that now have 70 to even 80% win rates, like to the point where there were customers like in their future list of like dream clients, tier ones that they'd always dreamt of working with.
Right.
And they just couldn't crack for 3 decades. Like, and now there isn't one they haven't worked with. Like, it's insane. The thing is, everyone has something they can differentiate with. And the key is really getting the right people to understand that, and in the world that we're living now, even post-COVID, it's got even worse. People don't have time. They're spread all over the place. They're not necessarily in an office together. Like that whole symbiosis of people, working together collaboratively is there to a degree, but it's not there the same as it was. And what's also fascinating is that, because of this big shift that's happened because of COVID, people are actually spending a lot more time on their devices. And so if you can get to the right kinds of people where they spend time, but more importantly, not just get them to actually understand what they need to about you, it changes everything, particularly if you can do that at scale, because like I was saying, there's times where, a deal, you get told like from your champion, like, guys, you've got it in the bag. And you almost want to like crack open a celebration drink, right? And you start fist pumping each other or whatever you do in your world. And then you get like a few months later, you get one of 3 things. You're either ghosted,
Yeah.
or you get like an awkward letter in the mail. Or the other thing that could happen is maybe if you're lucky, you might get a text or an email.
Right. Yeah.
They're not going to call you and say sorry. And the reason that it happened is because they couldn't articulate the things that make you special to the top of the tree, or worse, further down the tree, where like things just get out of control because of the scale of the amount of people that they rely on for their opinions. Like deals aren't made in a siloed vacuum anymore. They're made by more and more by consensus because people, don't want to take full responsibility for things necessarily, right? Especially if they're large deals. So I mean, our role isn't to do anything other than figure out like what are the key things, the key strengths that really make our customers shine, and we use technology to do that. But more importantly, like it's not just what are those things that make them shine. It's going a bit deeper than that and making sure that those things can actually be absorbed by the right people, so that they do actually take the time to understand it. We've got crazy stories, Greg, like, we've got,
I've been there, Quinn.
what's that, sorry?
I said I've seen a few of them, and I know in our previous meeting you've shared with some of those success stories that I mean,
Cohen, I'm kind of curious at a tactical level. So, we talked about that decision-making chain, and let's say that we've gotten it with our champion, but we need to influence, someone who's either higher on the chain or lower on the chain. Is your technology and your process, is that delivering contact information? Is it putting content in front of them? So how do you make that connection?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we've built some really great partnerships over the years with some very large technology companies, and we've got some, great API accesses and things. And so the first thing that allows us to do is to ensure that, we can kind of analyze the chain of an organization. But really what we're doing is we're hashing data between our platform, the wider web. So we have a bunch of partnerships with where we can get information in front of people. So it's not just social platforms and things. In fact, they play, like a 7 to 11% kind of ratio to it. But what we're doing is we're able to validate data. It's all anonymized, and we get back the company level data and the role level data. And so, when we're doing this, like I was saying, there's kind of two motions. Like I spoke about that graph of like the game everyone's playing where they're waiting, then they ramp up their activities, they submit, and then they like can't do a lot. So the first motion that we've built for is we call it always on. And it's kind of like we have this system that we call the 3 buckets, where it's like, who are the future companies that change the game? Who are the current ones where there's more share of wallet opportunities? Because quite often when you're playing in enterprise kind of size companies and deals, like you end up getting siloed into a project level, maybe it's a location level, a site level, a part of the business. And even though you're delivering hand over fist and everyone has the assumption that, great, they're our customer, really only a tiny part of that business is your customer. And they don't communicate across the organization, and you need to educate and align all of the other parties that decisions can come from, so they actually understand why they should work with you as well, because they never are going to tell each other. And then there's like, who are the past customers that really changed the game? Who, by the way, have a confirmation bias as to what you are, because maybe you worked with them 2, 3, 5, 10 years ago, and you don't have the contacts there anymore, and that's why you're not winning. But also you've evolved, and you're not doing this anymore. You're doing this, and you can deliver a lot more. So that's a long answer into like the first part of the solution. The part that you're talking to, Brandon, is it's the tactical element, right? And we actually call the second part of the solution tactical, which is funnily enough. So that's when we're getting very granular on like who's who in the zoo, essentially, far beyond the knowledge of a customer. And yeah, we're literally able to ensure that we're not just getting information to them, but that they're actually taking it in and absorbing it and understanding it. So we've built a heap of algorithms around the ability to understand whether that part of the decision chain and the right kind of people within it are actually taking you seriously through a deal-making process. And if they're not, and we don't see the right trend lines, our technology recalibrates to unblock blockages and re-educate parts of the chain that there's not alignment in. Did that answer your question? Is it very long?
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of Robert Cialdini's book Persuasion, and how you're being influenced with it, maybe not realizing it, but on a much more tactical and different scale. So
so we like to use the words educating and aligning. I mean, today it's good, isn't it? Make people understand what you do, but yeah.
So in terms of, I mean, everybody would love to hit the magic button and say, the easy button and say, oh, this will be active and working tomorrow. what's a typical time frame of implementation before you start to see results?
Yeah, so what we've got is we've got a fully managed technology solution as well. So that means like the change management level for an organization is very minimal. So like for us to actually be in a position where we've got everything required to be, live for them and have the ability to go tactical on anything that they want, generally takes 6 to 8 weeks. But there's a lot of grunt work done through our technology, a lot of grunt work going on our side to allow for that to occur. What it takes from a customer's point of view, from a time point of view, is 6 hours. So 6 hours in a customer's time, we're in a position where we can actually really start dialing up and educating, aligning all of the stakeholders that you could only ever kind of dream of like to get to. So it's not crazy.
With that process, it strikes me, how often do you find that when you're doing your grunt work outside of the business to see almost like what is the outside see of that company from the outside in versus what does the company think they are from the inside out? You ever see a misalignment of that to help them through that?
Totally. That's a really fascinating point because quite often these companies that we're working with just have these biases, and you kind of need a robust outside lens to have done, pretty rapid analysis on what's going on with the market and but also the people that you're coming up against, to show them like, hey, the reason you're not winning is because everyone's just doing the same thing. And drawing that out from them, we've built something pretty incredible to make that a relatively easy process. But it's very eye-opening for these guys. Like, there's stuff that comes out of it that they just had never thought about. Things that really should matter to people and people need to know about, but they just had never really thought about themselves in that way. And I think it all comes back down to that whole focus thing, Greg, where it's like, let's understand, the game you're currently playing. Sounds like a pretty sucky game, it's not the best game you could be playing. And that's cool. That's okay. But, what's the optimal game look like? Is it certain types of work that really moves the needle on your profitability and growth? Because that unlocks, and this is something I really love about your book, Greg, and we're big fans of your book, by the way, is that, as you kind of increase your profitability and you increase your profit, you've got more ability to then inject it into that next thing. So is it opening up another market? Is it another state? Is it another country? Is it that you've got a product that, you're pretty good at delivering? With a few more tweaks, you'll be great at delivering it. And there's a whole new pool of profitability that you could be selling to your existing customers and bringing new ones on. Like, it's really about getting on the same page with that, because in our view, that's what moves the needle. And I think too many people are getting distracted by noise. Like, who cares about clicks? Or what does that even mean?
They can make payroll. I know that.
Thank you. Yeah.
So, like, who clicks and what does that actually mean? And do they actually absorb anything? And do they understand anything? Like, it's just like, I don't know. It's kind of like just massive caffeine hits for everyone of like just noise. So,
No, but don't get me started on my favorite dislike metric of lifetime value of a customer.
Oh gosh,
That's
that's the
like,
worst.
I mean, we talk about the most made up calculation ever. But you bring up a good point though, because I will say, so like we're, right now, what we're seeing in the marketplace is where when things were hot, everybody was going really focused and deep. And now with the market not effectively growing in many sectors, but still there's still work to get. You're having to go this way with your offering, and you're also having to go this way with geography, like you said. And I will say that the times that I have to, one of the Horton professors that I get to work with at the EO at Horton program, he has this great phrase that he reminds every class. Sometimes you need to change your where, not your share. And it's just a great statement, because it's like, yeah, I mean, if I'm running, like one of our great clients is a multi-location express oil change. Well, there's only so much activity that you can run past each bay, at that one location. And you get to a point of optimization, but you have to change your where to grow that business to get another location. And then you run out of good locations in the market that you're in. So then, well, I got to go to another market. And that's where I think y'all's technology overcomes that fear, because every time I talk to them about going, any company going to another market, the unknown just overwhelms them. Oh, we don't know anybody. We don't know. I mean, I don't know, well, what's the potential of that market? I don't know. And if is there a way to find out? I don't know how to find out.
It's pretty interesting.
Reminds me of an analogy. Everybody's doing battle, and Cohen and his team are the special forces. Come in, and they're quick at what they do, and the way they do it is different than everyone else's, and it gets results fast.
Yeah, I mean, we've been described in all sorts of interesting ways, and one of them that I find interesting is like, we're basically a series of drones, that are collecting intelligence and can be laser focused on exactly what matters. It's pretty interesting.
Well, I do like the fact that you said that if the onboarding takes 6 hours or around that amount of time, because whenever we see clients take on, a new marketing firm or marketing initiative,
forever.
It takes forever. I mean, the client is one of the biggest problems, because, I'll get to that, because the marketing firm can only work with what they have. Exactly. And if you're the bottleneck, we need to create content. Well, you can, and the sloppy thing these days is, I can create content with the use of AI, but it has no soul. It has no movement. And
entirely. There's it's an interesting one, right? Because I mean, in my view, AI is fascinating. We're building a lot of it, and we understand it pretty deeply. But really, like, what's happening is people are playing this game with AI where they're trying to create more quickly. And it's like, why not play a different game, which is like, let's create things that are more effective. It's a very different lens to be looking through.
Yeah. And one of the, I'm going to do another podcast with a client of ours has, I think, started to look at it that way, that we've done some work with. And it's a marketing firm that was really early on in the AI game. And they did my speaker website, the gregcrabtree.net, and they did a really good job. But yet it's still one of those things that, I'm very picky about what goes on there, because it has to be something that is still within the genre of how we see things and how we talk about things as simple numbers. And there's been articles that they had AI help them produce, and they edited and they showed it to me, and I go, no, we're not going to post that. That is not how I would say it.
The complete opposite of what Greg Crabtree would say.
Exactly.
It's super fascinating, Greg, because I mean, ultimately, the best people that are at articulating what it is you do are your best people at articulating what it is you do.
Yeah.
And so all of these companies are outsourcing their knowledge set, trying to get other people to do it for them, but it's actually their knowledge and they're the best at articulating it. So what happens when you capture that in a better way?
Yeah.
I mean,
that is the crux of the issue. If you've got to be able to, can I capture it in a better way that doesn't take forever to do it? That's where you bend the curve.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well,
super interesting.
All right. Well,
awesome.
Any last thoughts for our listening audience that you want to leave them with on how to attack the B2B marketplace?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to drum in again, like just how important focus is, because I mean, what happens when you start focusing on the companies that really move the needle, that have the deals that you're the best at delivering? I'll tell you what happens. Transformational growth is what happens, because like if you can increase, stop increasing the amount of meat you're putting in the sausage, the sausage machine, and maybe look at it slightly differently and focus on, incrementally increasing your win rate. Because when you go from a 20% win rate to 30,
Yeah.
that's a 50% jump in your business, right? That's a big difference. But if you go from a 20% one over a couple of years to 40 or 50, I mean, that's a big jump, right? It's a awesome shift.
I mean,
Yeah.
essentially, in the fundamentals of quoting and winning, if I have to quote a lot, I've got to make the quoting process so automated and efficient that I don't care how many people want to quote. And then I got to get a reasonable win rate. But when you start to move upscale in these big ones, those are deals that I've got to go, that I have a super high win rate because I'm only bidding on things that I am one of the top 3, if not one of the top 8 winners anyway.
Yes.
And the more that I can tilt the scales in my favor, and like I said, I've had tons of deals in my clients' lifetimes and my own, where you get something all the way to the final decision maker, and nobody remembered to actually, get them prepared for it, and there would be just one thing that says no. And we had this, we had a marketing client who had an open door to get in with a public company to do some work. And I saw this one firsthand because I had some inside knowledge of this. And it was like, it was great. I mean, my client, who was a small firm, was less than half the cost of the provider that company was using. But yet, like you said earlier, it came down to, they ended up only giving a piece of the contract to test them before, and they actually then let them do kind of the full deal. Now, in the last 3 years, they've gotten to do more and more of the work because now they've become, a known vendor. But they didn't have what you're doing to win them over and say, well, we might be a small shop, but we do big things, and we're capable. And you've got to have that ability to tilt the scale, if that's the game you want to play. And I think everybody wants to play that game, but they just don't have the resources to do it.
Yeah, that's right. And, to do it with human resource would be a mega expensive task. And there's so much inherent risk in it because you don't know if they can get the job done. You don't know if they can get to the right people, even though they have a lot of relationships.
I used to say, and you've heard me say this when we met, I said, I used to say that you had a 1 in 10 chance of hiring a successful business development / salesperson. I think it's I think it's 1 out of 20 now.
Yeah.
It's almost. So how many times you want to go to the well? Because, our standard thing that we tell a client when they hire a key business development person, this is great. I'll call you in 30 days and I'm going to ask you one question. Are they going to make it? And because in 30 days, if they're going to make, I don't care if they've sold anything, but you've watched them take actions for 30 days. And as a good friend of mine says, if there is any doubt, there is no doubt. And you throw them back in the heap and you run in the next one, because you might have to do this about 10 to 20 times before you actually find that one that actually works.
And each time it costs 30 or 40,000.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Yeah. And there's got to be a better way if you want to be a better winning company, you've got to find a way to break that cycle.
Correct. It's an interesting point, Greg, because, everything changes when, you're actually enhancing the ability for your current resources, whether that's your management team who are doing some of the sales, whether it's, it is a business development team or even one resource. Like, everything changes when you can give them something that enhances their ability to win. Like, it changes everything from a profitability point of view as well. But what it does also, and we've seen this, we've met with a lot of companies that, like, when you get a deep with them and you have a proper chat with them about what it is they're trying to achieve, quite often they just want to sell it because they're tired. They're over it. They've had enough. They're not getting out of the business what they actually deserve and what they want.
Yep.
And they're just like, look, our goal is in 3 years' time, we want to be in a position to sell. We've had this conversation many times over the years. And what's really cool and fascinating is that when they actually start increasing their win rates and they get a level of predictability, and they can make better decisions as a result of that, you get to year 2, year 3, and the last thing they want to do is sell.
Yeah.
But they have the option to and get what they deserve from it.
And to this point,
difference.
So here's the financial side behind exactly what you just said. So we see people all the time trying to buy their way into growth. We see it all the time of, hey, let me know if you see somebody in this industry that has this amount of EBITDA and we're interested in buying. I get that. But you know what? If I buy a company at 5 times EBITDA, I got an inherent 20% return on invested capital. If I had to pay 10 times EBITDA, I got a 10% return on invested capital.
Yeah.
Companies that win with your methodology, you get 75 to 100% return on invested capital for that growth.
Yeah.
Which game do you want to play?
Yeah, exactly.
That to me, that's just the bottom line. And we see so many people that we have to convince that organic growth, when you know how to go win, is just infinitely better in return on investment than trying to buy and do acquisitions, because you don't know what kind of skunk's in the woodpile when you buy a company. I mean, you got it. And you might get something even worse. So
it's so true. Yeah, it's super fascinating. The other thing that's interesting as well is like, it's not just the focus game, but you touched on a really valid point, Greg, which is like, sometimes you meet companies and they're like, oh, our win rate, it's 100%. You're like, yeah, but are you having the courage to go after other business than what you're actually confident you are definitely going to win?
Yeah.
Because if you're not, I mean, that's not going to scale you. You're not going to get where you want by just consistently going after the company that you're familiar with. And by the way, there's a ton of risk in that, because you're going to be so baked with that 1, 2, 3, 4 customers that when one of them leaves, which will inevitably happen, where are you then? It's wild to me.
And to that point, I call that, when you only take what comes to you, you're letting the market define you. When you go get the business that you're talking about, you're defining the market you want to be. And to me, that is it's a 10 times stronger strategic, position to be in. But there's a lot of companies that feel spunky with their inflow, and they're letting the market define them, and they're not realizing their full potential.
So true.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, if people are interested in talking to you, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Yeah, if you want to, reach out to me on LinkedIn. So I'm the only Kohen, Kohen, Grogan, Grogan, on LinkedIn in the whole world. So you'll find me pretty easily.
Well, that's pretty easy. That's all I always say, is with a name like Greg Crabtree, I'm pretty easy to find. It's either going to be me, a dead wrestler, or a dead bull rider. Yeah.
So I remember the first time I looked you up, Greg, a while back, and I was like, Greg's not dead.
It came through his Google feed the other day that he had died, and so we had a good laugh about that.
Hey, I don't think we said it. I don't think we said it, Kohen, but
well, I'm happy to give that out. So my direct email address is Kohen, Kohen, at Yappy YAPPYGROUP.com. So feel free to hit me out. Happy to chat.
Yeah, I was just gonna say we haven't. I think we said the name of your company. It's Yappy. No, that's all right. Yeah, we were sitting here. We went into it. We started going right into it. I'm sitting there going, did Greg say it was Yappy, or I was gonna roll with it? But yeah, Good website, good, cool stuff on there to check it out too of what they're doing and what they're about. So please check it out there too.
And it is yappy.com.au.
Yes.
Yeah. You have to put the AU to get to the right. So,
yeah. Awesome. Well, hey, thanks for coming on here, Kohen. Really appreciate it. Great stuff. A great insight on marketing, because for us and our clients this year, I think we've probably had more marketing conversations than we normally have. Brandon's nodding his head there, and it's been crazy. So I think I've been promoting it all week to my clients to check it out, and that you would have some good insight, and it was really really great. So we appreciate it. So
we're really stoked to be in the United States as well. It's a great country, and there's a lot of exciting stuff going on there. So thanks for kissing an Aussie tech company. We love it.
Hey, we love it. Yeah. Well, hey, great. So everyone, thanks for listening. For Greg, Brandon, and our guest Kohen, Mike, and we'll see you next time.
If you want to know more about driving sustainable profitability for your business, or are interested in learning more about CRI Simple Numbers, please visit our website at simplenumberscri.com. Thanks for listening to this episode of Profitability Playbook, the Simple Numbers Podcast. You can subscribe to Profitability Playbook on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you prefer to listen to podcasts. If you liked what you heard today, please leave us a review. The views expressed on Profitability Playbook, the Simple Numbers Podcast, are those of the presenter and moderator and do not necessarily reflect the views of CRI Simple Numbers or the CRI family of companies. This podcast is intended for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended to replace professional advice received directly. Consult with your CRI Simple Numbers advisor or another trusted professional if you have questions about your specific situation.